So now that we found the inverse with linear functions, let's find the inverse of a quadratic function. Look at these. We're also going to graph them as well, so you can understand the restrictions on these as you are doing the homework. So the process of this is the exact same as before, right? So you set f of x equal to y. So y equals x squared minus 2. Then what you do is you switch the roles of x and y, and so you switch them exactly as they are. So x equals y squared minus 2. And then we're going to solve for y. So let's add 2 to both sides. We get x plus 2 equals y squared. Next is we take the square root. Remember, when you take the square root, it is y equals plus or minus the square root of x plus 2. So you get a plus or minus. Now looking at this, it says that x is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, x is greater than or equal to 0. So in that case, then we don't need the negative. Okay, if it said it was less than, then we would take the negative. But positive, we would leave it as positive square root of x plus 2. Okay, so now let's take a look at this graph, just so you can understand what's happening here. So number 1, let's graph x squared minus 2. X squared minus 2. So we have to remember, how is that transformed? And we know that it's down 2. Then, thinking about our pattern, it's not stretched any, so we go right 1, up 1, right 1, up 3, and then we could go right 1, up 5. And then on the left side, left 1, up 1, left 1, up 3, left 1, up 5. But our restriction says that x is only greater than or equal to 0. So what that means is we only want the right side, right? X is greater than or equal to 0. So we want the x values that are on this side only. So therefore, this graph looks like this. That is our f of x. Now, thinking about the values of g of x, okay? So, sorry, I should have rewritten this as g of x. G of x equals square root of x plus 2. So how is that shifted? We know that that is transformed 2 to the left here. Then, another good number to plug in. Okay, well, it's a square root, so when it's positive, so I kind of know the general direction it's going. But let's plug in a number. So I want to go 1 to the right. So negative 1, if I plug in negative 1, square root of negative 1 plus 2 is square root of 1, and so that's just 1. So negative 1, I am at positive 1. Then, the next one I would have would be, let's see, I wanted to make it 4. So if I plug in positive 2, 2 plus 2 is 4, then square root of 4 is 2. So notice it hits right at that point right there. Now I want you to notice the pattern that's happening here. Up 1, right 1, up 1, right 3. And notice how that corresponds to here. Right 1, up 1, right 1, up 3, right 1, up 5. Okay? So I hope you're seeing that little pattern there. So if you know from here, from this point here, we would say that it's up 1, right 5. So this graph looks like this. And if we draw the line of reflection, it would be here. So it is reflected across it. So very neat graph, number 1. I think it's a very neat graph. And let's talk about the points. So let's talk about, first of all, the values of x squared minus 2. So for x, if I plugged in, let's see, x and y. So for x, if I plugged in x is 0, y is negative 2. If I plugged in x is 1, I got negative 1. If I plug in x is 2, I would get 2. Okay, let's start with that. Now, we were talking about earlier about inverses. You could switch the roles of x and y. And notice if I do that. So let's go ahead and say these are now my x values. Here, this is my x values of the new graph, and this is the y values. Okay, so let me just do this in the green. X, and this is now y. So if we take a look at this, x value. So let's say our x value is negative 2. Negative 2. So x is negative 2, then y is 0. Notice that that is my exact point here. And then if I looked at -1, then I would have a +1. -1, +1. There's my point here. Then if I had x is 2, y is 2, which is right here. So notice the relationship between these. So yes, so we could figure out these graphs by how we know transformations, but you could also figure it out by understanding that you can switch the roles of x and y. If you know the points of one of them, you just have to switch those roles and then be able to graph it. So go ahead and try number 8 on your own, and then in the next video, I will go ahead and show you the answer.